Let's look at what we know about the whole Russia collusion situation. Let's look at what we know. There was no collusion, so there was no crime. That is now established. To the degree that we can that we could ever establish this, we've had a special counsel, we've gone through everything. It's not there. There was no collusion. Okay. It was a setup. There were individuals involved in this process who lied. They got fired from the FBI. Their text messages show they had bias. Their text messages show there was politicization. It was a setup. Who was involved in that setup? That's an open question still, or the full extent of who was involved. And then we get to the question that upsets Democrats, I think, more than anything else out there. Did Obama know about this? Remember that Democrats don't have much to point to for a legacy for their party, stretching back to the era of the Clintons now. That is positive. That is without the Obama years, people would say, when was the last time the Democrats did anything worthwhile? Now, I know a lot of you are saying, well, the Obama years weren't particularly worthwhile either, but to Democrats, they certainly are. And they have now seen their party shift. It has become more left-wing, more progressive, and it's a party that is built on the foundation of a return to what they believe is the glory of Obamaism instead of looking forward to an era of renewed Clintonism, right? We have entered the Obamaist era in Democratic politics, and so that means that he will become a figure that is not able to be openly criticized without the most fierce counterattack from the left. And that also means that anything that would truly undermine the legacy that they are still constructing around Obama will be fought with everything that they have. And that's where this brings me to the reality of what Obama knew and when did he know it on Russia collusion and the efforts to try and stop Trump from becoming president and then undo his presidency once he had won the presidency. What did he know and when did he Obama, and when did he know it? The refrain from journalists on this, you know what it will be right away. They're going to claim that this is a conspiracy theory, that it's horrible that Trump would even raise this. Well, let's take a step back for a moment. I've seen in recent weeks a lot of explanation of the surveillance of Trump, or of the Trump campaign, which, keep in mind, they told us that was a crazy thing to say. I remember it. In the early days of was there surveillance of Trump or Trump-associated individuals, the Democrat line was, that is a terrible conspiracy theory. How dare anyone ever even suggest that? It's just completely outrageous. It's completely unfair. Clearly, there was no one in the Trump campaign who was being spied on. Oh, actually, no, there were people being spied on. Whoops. But it was justified. That's what they said. It was justified. Okay. Well, here's what they're going to have to come up with now. Here's where you're going to have to find a Democrat Party line that will hold together. I don't know what they think it'll be, because this is going to be a tough one. If the spying was justified, and it was all duly processed and went through in the 2016 election period, if all the I's were dotted, the T's were crossed, FISA court, head of the FBI, does anyone think it is credible that Obama did not know? Now, when you factor, you know the answer to this. Of course, Obama knew. We're just going to have to figure out, one, how much of it, how can we prove that? And I wouldn't be surprised if this came up in the Inspector General report and they say that either Obama is going to claim executive privilege over those documents or they can't get access to them. There'll be, you want to see a cover-up? Just wait until they start poking around, looking to find out what what President Obama himself knew about all of this and what he allowed to go forward. Wouldn't that also explain a lot? If President Obama had just given, and it's just like dealing with a mafia boss, right? They always say this about Trump. Oh, he doesn't have to say the thing for his underlings to know what they want. Does anyone think it would have been hard for Obama to tell James Comey, and let's also, come on, they could have just had a conversation and known that it was known that there was no recording or it was off the record. And Obama could have passed along exactly what he thought about this. But if you were McCabe and Comey and Strzok and Page and these others who were all involved in this effort, if you were Brennan at the CIA running around with your delusions, and you had gotten word from the commander-in-chief himself that this was something that he was on board for, and you assumed that Hillary Clinton was probably going to win the election anyway, but you would look like a hero after she won the election if you had dug into this. You know, maybe, folks, I know people don't ever bring this up, maybe the game all along here was they were going to bring criminal charges against Trump after he lost as a private citizen. Why doesn't anyone ever bring that up? Why doesn't anyone ever think about this? You know, maybe the whole plan here was to get Trump on something, and that's why they were fishing and fishing and fishing. And even though they assumed Hillary would win, Trump, after losing that election to Hillary, would be defenseless in many ways against whatever the deep state decided to do to him. You know, they already destroyed Carter Page and George Papadopoulos' Fourth Amendment rights. They've already abused the process. We know that. That's established. But if they got something on Trump and were able to bring some charge against him after he had lost the election with Hillary as the president, does anyone think that Hillary would have objected to that? You got Nancy Pelosi saying she wants Trump locked up now. So when you think about what it would have meant to this whole process to have Obama in the loop, even if in a somewhat informal fashion, in the loop about what was going on. He did know about Russian interference. Is it credible that they said that he would have met with Clapper and Brennan, these anti-Trump zealots, and it never would have come up that they believed that Trump himself was tied into this effort? That's not. No serious person could say that, right? No serious person would believe that. You know, when did Obama know about this? And what did he tell people? It would have been so easy as commander-in-chief, as the favorite politician of the American left, to just give a little bit of a wink and a nod to a few bureaucrat partisans like Comey and Brennan and Clapper, all of whom really like their taste of power in D.C. You know, you have to remember, for these senior lifelong bureaucrats, people like Comey and McCabe and Clapper, they get a taste of being important and being powerful and being even a little bit famous without the money and without the freedom that other people in society, people like Donald Trump, have. And there is a resentment behind all that. There's both a sense of self-righteousness, you know, they chose the honorable public servant path, and then also the resentment of why should other people get to enjoy themselves more and have greater freedom and have this life where they can do whatever they want when running being the DNI, which people always, the DNI is really almost a ceremonial position. The guy doesn't have any power, doesn't really do anything. Just another bureaucrat. It's another high-level intel bureaucrat. I'm telling you, they're going to fight like mad, though, to prevent information about what Obama knew from coming out, because that starts to look really bad. Then we have to start asking questions like, do we even have a government that we can trust at all anymore on the federal bureaucrat side? If Obama was telling them to go forward with this, and they're able to hide that up until this point, I think it would have some very troubling implications for whom we could trust within the government going forward. And what would that mean? But Obama had to know. He had to know. And it doesn't, there's no effort among journalists to do this, no effort among journalists to figure this out. So I think that's where you can start to look for additional clues. It's when the journos have no interest in a story that is a story that the rest of us have to dig in. So I will continue to dig in on this.
We have the greatest income inequity in the history of the United States of America since 1902. And the fact of the matter is, there is plenty of money to go around. The first thing I would do as president was eliminate the president's tax cut.
First thing Democrats want to do, folks, just like the first thing Republicans want to do in the other direction, the first thing that Joe Biden's going to do is raise your taxes. He's going to take more of your money. He's going to tell you you're going to get more in goods and services back from the government. He's going to tell you that, this is what fairness is, that this is the way that it has to go if we're going to live in a more fair society. Well, you say, well, what is fair? And who determines what constitutes fairness? The answer is, well, the Democrats who are in power. The Democrats who think that they have a better handle on what each and every American should have or be allowed to have. There is plenty of money to go around, he says. This is, unfortunately, at odds with our mounting national debt. And this is a bipartisan problem. I will say that. This is an issue that we have yet to seriously tackle as a society. And there's another component of this, too, and that is I know this is an unpopular topic with a lot of folks, the intergenerational theft that our system is currently allowing. Let me explain. For some of you who are the boomer beneficiaries of this, get frustrated. This is just the truth. That the programs right now that are dependent on government spending, that are so popular, are not paid for. Future generations are being told that they will have to pay for them. That also means that you'll have, one, a raise in taxes for those programs. Two, keep in mind you also have debt service that goes along with that. So it's not just the money that's spent. It's the money spent on the money that has been spent through servicing the debt, which is going to get to be much larger. And as interest rates historically normalize, which hasn't really happened yet, that's going to be a very real concern. But there's going to be a whole movement afoot of people saying, well, hold on a second. Why am I paying all of these taxes? Why am I paying for these social programs that I'm not going to be able to have? I'm not going to be able to enjoy. Social Security is probably fixable. They have to make a few tweaks to it. Medicare is not. And Medicare is something that can't continue as it is indefinitely. And yet the Democrat Party is essentially now a Medicare for all party. So their choice here, or their decision, would be to double down on this even more. But there's not plenty of money to go around. The math does not add up eventually. We're going to have to start cutting spending. Have to think about this. And on the intergenerational theft issue, there's also a very interesting study that came out over the weekend. I forget, I think it was either in CNBC or Bloomberg or one of these things, where they looked at what it would take in the 1970s if you put aside 5%, if an average person in a major U.S. city put aside 5% of his or her income, how long it would take to have a down payment on a house. And in cities like Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, you name it. You look at the major cities, but particularly cited were San Francisco, I think, New York, and Los Angeles. In the 1970s, an average person putting aside 5% of his or her salary a year would have had a down payment for a mid-price for the market house in 5 years. So if you come out of school and you're making an average salary and you're living in Los Angeles and you save 5% a year, in 5 years you're going to have a down payment for a house. You'll be 27. You'll be able to put a down payment for a medium-sized house. Does anyone want to guess what that number is now for major cities in the United States? It's closer to 40 years. So if you are an average wage earner trying to get into an average home in Los Angeles, New York, San Francisco, you are going to be putting aside 5% of your income, which, given the rate of rents and all the living expenses, that's not easy. You're supposed to 5% of your income aside in savings for a house, 5 or 10% of your income aside for 401k. It's not easy stuff when you start to really look at it. And you're going to have to save up for about 40 years before you have, remember, that's not buying a home outright. That is a down payment on a home. 40 years. I think it was 36 years in New York City. This is a problem. And this is not a problem that people are going to say, they're going to want to believe, oh, that's just the market speaking. No, it's not. Because there's been federal government policy stretching back for 70 years of incentivizing housing construction and build all these different loan programs and efforts and incentives to get to a home ownership society. This is what we're supposed to be in, a home ownership society. And then you have in some of the major cities and some of the major urban areas another issue that comes up, and that is that they're trying to limit the housing supply because housing scarcity is necessary to keep the prices of what are overwhelmingly boomer-owned homes, which are often used as ATM machines via things like a home equity loan. They got to keep those prices high, so there's a lot of regulations in place and a lot of policy that's counterproductive to prevent new housing from going in. Now, this is true in cities. This is not true in rural areas, and I'm not saying this is the same across, but this is true in New York City. It is true in San Francisco and Los Angeles. There are these it's true in Portland. It's true in these more mid-sized cities now, too. And you might say, well, Buck, but the young people just need to move where exactly? The jobs are increasingly, new job growth is concentrated in the major urban areas, too. So you're drawing young people into major urban areas. You're telling them that they have to save up for 40 years before they can have a down payment on a home. You know what they're going to do at some point? When the voting bloc gets large enough? The millennials, who are often made fun of by boomer-controlled media, are going to turn around and say, the answer is just to have the government pay for all this stuff, and it'll be somebody else's problem. This is how we get closer to socialism. The boomers have effectively set up a system that is turnkey for democratic socialism. We're pretty close to it now.
I would really like to see a return of major and worthwhile debate in public. And there's going to be a lot of talk about how these Democrat debates that are coming up are somehow going to serve this purpose. But I don't think that that's true, because the Democrats are all effectively playing for the same team and just doing variations on a theme. I want people with diametrically opposed points of view, and I really mean this, diametrically opposed points of view, who are representative of large constituencies, who have a lot of power, a lot of public influence over the discussion that's going on national level issues. I want them to have to defend their ideas and to have a real discussion and to have a real exchange about who's right and who's wrong. I don't like this echo chamber effect that our society has fallen into, where everyone's only preaching to the choir. Now, I also don't agree that it's a good thing, and I just went through a year of this at the Hill, to have a forced neutrality in discussion, or at least a forced civility where you can't say what you really want to say because it will inflame the other side too much. No, I want people to be able to say what they want to say about issues of public importance, about the things that matter. And we should start to push for this. And I think one of the only ways to get it is to call people out. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is a perfect example. She's someone who I believe, well, and this is why she won't debate someone publicly, but if forced to defend the talking points and stream of consciousness left-wing babble that she shares on a regular basis, if forced to defend that, her positions would look foolish and would crumble very quickly. And I also want to know, maybe I'm wrong about her. Maybe she's a more adept debater, or maybe or some of her ideas I should think more about myself. But I want to know that. I'd want to see that. Now, I think that's very unlikely, but I would want to see. But she has been out there recently making a lot of noise on a lot of issues that, for me, are just indicative of somebody who is never really tested in the public sphere. It's one of the reasons I am so completely exasperated with and disgusted by mainstream journalists in this country, is that they all run around talking about how they speak truth to power, they hold power accountable. When was the last time a journalist, other than somebody from Fox News, other than a conservative, just a so-called neutral journalist, asked Ocasio-Cortez a tough or challenging question? I cannot remember it. Everyone just goes around taking dictation from this woman who is not very knowledgeable about anything, and I think I think she would benefit from being put in her place. I think she's the Prince Joffrey of the Democratic Party. You know, if you step out of line, she puts her little social media minions after you, and that's that. Here's what she says, for example, and I mean, even if you're a prominent Democrat, that's not just for Republicans. But here are some of the areas where I think we should see AOC get asked a real question. I would like her to debate someone on this, and there should be public challenges made. You know, we need intellectual dueling to make a comeback. I never see this happen anymore. You never have somebody who is prominent in the public conversation about important issues who will take a challenge. The only exception to this is presidential debates every 4 years. And that's, you know, the president is not necessarily the best thought leader or spokesperson for any one issue on either side. I want the best. I want to see who can make the case in the most compelling fashion. And this is a way of advancing what is good and what is right in society. AOC, for example, has said this about the Hyde Amendment. Remember, the Hyde Amendment was for decades a middle ground position, so-called middle ground position, the Democrats took where there would not be direct federal funding for abortions. This is now what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says about that. Play 4.
I think it really depends, and that's really what the Hyde Amendment is about. The Hyde Amendment isn't about abortion per se. The Hyde Amendment is truly about equality of health care and health care access for low-income women and women of color and women that get caught in our mass incarceration system. And so the Hyde Amendment is about income inequality, and it's about women's health care in a system of income inequality. So I think that we need to repeal it.
So she's being asked questions there by ABC's Jonathan Karl. So this is a perfect place for a journalist to ask real questions. He did not push her on any of these issues. He did not push back on how does a woman being caught in mass incarceration factor into this bout of verbal diarrhea from this leftist. How does this actually happen? Just blah, 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 all the stuff that she's spurting out here. She said something about women caught up in the mass incarceration system. I don't think she means, and I would be curious, actually, what she thinks she means. I don't think she means somebody who is in prison and pregnant, and would have, although maybe that's part of it. I think what she's referring to would be someone who is pregnant while the husband gets sent off to prison. That's the way that, or is in prison. I shouldn't say husband, I should say the father, not often the case, not husbands. But the father gets sent off to prison, and so the answer that Ocasio-Cortez offers is to abort that child. That is an abominable and immoral point of view. Why wouldn't a journalist just ask, so that's what you advocate for? Oh, they'll always say it's up to the woman. It's the woman's choice. It's the woman's choice. No one ever has to make a tough call here other than the woman. The society doesn't get to make the call. The doctor doesn't get to make the call. This thing you always hear about in consultation with the doctor. The doctor can only tell you what the health implications are. The doctor isn't there, nor is equipped to help anyone discuss the moral implications of these decisions, really, because those moral implications aren't based upon any medical expertise or knowledge that the public does not have full access to. But she said that what the Hyde Amendment is really about, it isn't about abortion per se. That is a ridiculous statement. That is a propagandistic maneuver. She's saying it's not about abortion, it's about something else. No, it is very much about abortion. It is about whether or not tax dollars, which are forcibly taken from you and me, should go directly to paying for people to kill their babies. That is the issue. We can pretend there are other issues, we can call it other things. That is the issue. Equality of health care and health care access for low-income women and women of color and women that get caught in our mass incarceration system. Why is this, and how does she view this as a racial issue? What are her implications, or what is she really saying? There's no follow-up from Jonathan Karl. He is there to take dictation from AOC, to set her up to say whatever she wants, and then to take dictation from her in response. You'll notice that with Republican interviewees, this tends not to be the case. But yeah, the Hyde Amendment isn't about abortion. Someone should publicly challenge AOC to a debate on how the Hyde Amendment, which is about funding for abortion, isn't about abortion. That should be the topic of conversation. Let's see how she does with that. And then AOC on Joe Biden.
given everything that we are hearing about the Me Too movement still. And, I was talking to a woman recently who went off about how, she was a liberal. And she went off about how there was society is moving closer and closer to the Handmaid's Tale all the time. And it's just bizarre feminist anti-male propaganda that you're constantly hearing. You've got that thread in society right now, and then you also have this effort to act like there are not these Democrats, with very important Democrats to the left, people like formerly Bill Clinton. He's not important anymore, but Joe Biden. There's not something strange or bizarre about the behavior. And I would just say this: I do believe that Biden shouldn't be chased out of public life for what we know about that he's done with women, because I don't think that double standards that hurt the other side are something that any of us should embrace. I do, however, just want to note that if he were a Republican, they would say that he should have to quit. And they would yell and scream and boycott and threaten and everything else, because the left has no principles. But here's what AOC says about Biden's behavior. Play 5.
I don't think that voters think that he is necessarily guilty of sexual misconduct or anything like that. But I do think that there may be some discomfort, especially seeing some clips this week and, a week before, telling a 13-year-old, telling her brothers to watch out for her. And I think there are some things with female voters that it's just not quite locked down. And I think that there's some ways to go, but this is also a cultural evolution, I think, that we're having as a country. So I don't think it's necessarily about being punitive in these ways. But I do think, like in all issues and with all demographics and in all electorates, it's not about right and wrong sometimes. It's just about whether feeling like someone gets it or not.
So they're saying he doesn't really get it, but he shouldn't suffer any consequences. From what I remember, the comment he made to that girl that she brought up that didn't strike me as all that odd or bothersome. But now this is my main point about it. I don't know what is bothersome anymore, really. And I would offer to you that in the era of because it's all about power and power dynamics. It's not really about morality and decency and kindness and respect for each other. That's not how the left now uses the Me Too movement. And note that a lot of the most prominent cases of Me Too abuse were very connected, very powerful leftists, Democrats, friends of the Clintons, friends of the Obamas, media people who were revered, who were treated as the best in their fields, amazing individuals by the left. We shouldn't just skip past all of that now. We should keep that in mind. But she's saying that, AOC is saying that Biden, his behavior makes people uncomfortable. Just remember that if it were a Republican, they would say that he should quit. He should be done. And the way that they misconstrue the locker room talk that Trump had on that Access Hollywood tape, that's a perfect example. They always make it sound like Trump was saying that he was sexually assaulting women. That's not what Trump said. I'm a guy, I know what he was saying. He was saying that he can be very sexually forward and aggressive with women, and that they let him because they're okay with it because he's famous. So they're always playing games with this. They're always changing the standards around. But AOC gets away with saying insane things on a regular basis and never gets challenged. Journalists don't challenge her. They don't ask her to explain these things. She just babbles on, and if you do publicly go after her and her ideas, not her as a person, if you go after her ideas, you're told that you're a bad person, you're a racist, and you're a sexist. And that's the America we're supposed to live in now. When it comes to buying wine, most people are like me. They just buy whatever kind of looks cool or what's on sale. But that's all stopped because I joined First Leaf Wine Club. First Leaf makes it so easy to discover wines that you're going to love. They have this really cool curated club experience where you just answer a few questions, and then they have this custom algorithm and professional wine concierge team that'll send you wines that you love. It's kind of like Pandora or Spotify, but for wine, right? They give you these great suggestions. You just answer a few quick questions, and then they'll send you an introductory 6-pack of wine, all for $29.95. Yeah, I'm serious. It's an incredible deal. So sign up with my link at First Leaf Wine Club today, and you'll get an exclusive intro offer, 6 bottles of wine for only $29.95 plus free shipping.
Just go to tryfirstleaf.com/buck. That's 6 bottles of wine for only $29.95 plus free shipping at tryfirstleaf.com/buck. By any means necessary, Denver City Council member Candice DeBaca, or Candy, what is her name? Candice DeBaca, I think it is. Remember the Denver City Council. Now, you might say, Buck, who cares about the Denver City Council? Point is, you got Bernie Sanders, who right now, based on the polling we're seeing, is beating Donald Trump in some of the key states. Although that will change very quickly. You'll see a bump for Trump as soon as he starts campaigning and starts taking the fight to the other side. But the things that were being said here by this woman and by Bernie Sanders as well, ideas like community ownership, that this is we have an economic system that doesn't work. Who has an economic system that does work? That's what I would like to know. Whose economic system do they really want us to mirror and adapt to? Who should we be more like? I'm curious about that. They never really give us clarity. They just run through the talking points, and we're told that if only Bernie Sanders says a handful of people have all the power in this country. Okay, well, who's the handful of people? Is George Soros? Is Tom Steyer? What's his name? Michael Bloomberg? The most wealthy people in Hollywood? Steven Spielberg and Clooney and DiCaprio, and are they part of the? Are they good or bad? They're very rich and very powerful. Are they part of this? Oprah, a billionaire. I mean, there's a lot of liberal. All of Silicon Valley, basically, all those billionaires, with the exception of Peter Thiel. There's some others, but are they the good guys or the bad guys in this whole process? I always want to ask someone like Candice. This woman from the Denver City Council, her name doesn't really appear clearly on my sheet here, or Bernie Sanders, who is such a fan. Bernie Sanders, the socialist who owns 3 houses and made almost $1 million from his last book, which is a lot of money for an author, I can tell you. Bernie Sanders, many others in the Democratic Party now, they'll talk about community ownership as though everything is a community garden, that people can just do a little bit and that they can all enjoy this space together. That's not reality. The interests of individuals and the need for local improvisation based on those interests, absent government intrusion and unnecessary government manipulation in those markets of that property involved with those efforts, that's essential. That's a lesson that we have been learning. Well, you could argue we've been learning for all of human history. But we have a couple of 100 years now of very good data and results to rely on, that everybody is going to share in the results equally, and we'll rely on the goodwill of the group for how we're going to go forward and handle something, how we're going to work on a commercial enterprise, how we're going to build a company, how we're going to distribute a good or a service. A collectivist approach to this, it always fails. It always fails. I would ask you, would you rather live, or would you rather rent a home from somebody who had been living there for years and now is renting out their home, and they're going to get all of the rent, they're going to get all of the benefit from your signing on to live in that home? Or would you want to rent a home from a collective, like a community group, where you got 1,000 people that all own less than 1% of the home, and they have no real incentive to do anything? Do you think that home's going to be in better shape or worse shape? Is it going to be in a state of constant renewal or a state of disrepair? We know this. Individuals react. Human nature is based in individual incentive and ingenuity. That's just the truth. Individual responsibility. That's why Marxism, contemporary American liberalism more and more, is built on a faulty foundation. They're just wrong about the most fundamental truth, which is that human beings, first and foremost, care about themselves.
So I guess we don't have to give them asylum then, right? I mean, maybe we should be claiming asylum in their country. It's interesting, isn't it? So if you're supposed to stop in the first safe nation then why in the world aren't all those people from El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras either staying put or stopping at a different country on the way to America? On a recent Saturday in Tijuana, there were 90 Cameroonians lined up to get on a waiting list to request asylum. It's now about 7,500 people on that list. Also, Ethiopians, people from Sudan, from Eritrea, from Congo, like I said, Cameroon. The Cameroonians generally fly to Ecuador because no visa is required, and they take about 4 months to reach Tijuana. It's a long article explaining how this is happening. But the question is, why are we letting it? Why aren't we demanding that our representatives and our president protect our borders the way they have sworn an oath to do so? Let me get you more details on that and what we're not allowed to talk about. An article out of the Washington Examiner. Border Patrol agents not immune to the onslaught of illnesses plaguing the migrant holding centers. You can't say that they have illnesses. That means that you're a racist and a xenophobe and a bigot. But it's the truth. It doesn't matter. We'll talk about that in just a minute. 855-400-SAVAGE. 855-400-SAVAGE. My name is Greg Knapp, in for the doctor on the Savage Nation.
9. Well, now, here's something interesting. Just listen. There are over 2 million burglaries reported every year. That's one every 13 seconds. And what's crazy is that only 1 in 5 homes have home security. That's why Simply Safe is transforming home security and getting you the best, most reliable, and comprehensive protection there is. You see, Simply Safe does something different. They protect every door, window, and room with 24/7 professional monitoring. Police dispatch is up to 3.5 times faster because they use video verification. And Simply Safe has no contracts or hidden fees. Their system is designed to blend right into your home. No wires, no drilling. Easy to order, easy to set up. You can install it in under an hour. Prices are always fair and honest. Around-the-clock monitoring, just $15 a month. Visit simplysafesavage.com to get free shipping and a 60-day risk-free trial. What have you got to lose? Nothing. Go now and be sure you go to simplysafesavage.com so they know that this show sent you. That's simplysafesavage.com.
My name is Greg Knapp, in for the doctor on the Savage Nation. You can jump in at 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-SAVAGE, and the doctor will be back tomorrow. Don't forget michaelsavage.com for your headlines. You can download the Savage podcast. You can pre-order the new book, A Savage Life, that's coming out next week. We were talking about what's going on with illegal immigration, and we've got quite a few problems going on with this. We've got hundreds of African migrants now coming across, more than double what it was last year. Why? Well, because you want to come to America because America's awesome. Okay, I get that. But we can't just let everybody do it and everybody do it. There needs to be some kind of a process and an order. Nope. We get to take in whoever wants to come. That's what we're being told now. And I thought when you try to get asylum, you go to the first safe nation. Well, they're flying all the way from Africa, various nations in Africa, over to various nations in South America, including Ecuador, including Brazil and others. And then they're making their way up through our southern border, and then they're making it to San Antonio on a bus, and then they're getting sent out all over America. How? How is this okay? And if it's supposed to be the first safe nation, hey, this new annual global index, the 13th annual global peace index, says that we're only ranked 128th safest out of 163 nations, and that, well, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras are all safer than us. Now, I disagree with this survey. I think it's stupid. Listen to the things that they use as factors on whether you're peaceful or not. Rate of homicide? Okay, that makes sense. Incarceration? No. I mean, just because you have more people in prison doesn't mean you're less safe. It could mean you're more safe because you've locked up the criminals. The presence of small arms. Well, if you mean in the hands of individual citizens, then I would again say that makes us more safe, not less. Why don't you ask the people in Venezuela? How about military expenditures? Once again, I think we're safer, not less safe, because of our military. Ongoing conflicts? Well, that depends on whether they're in your nation or not, and we don't have any in our nation, so I think that makes us safer. Terrorism? Good one. And the overall economic impact of violence? and climate change. Well, if climate change is a global problem, if you believe that, created by man, then how would you measure that based on a country? But anyway, the point is we're supposed to be 128 safest. These other places are safer, so why in the world don't they stay? The explosion in immigration in the U.S. from sub-Saharan Africa countries coincides with a steep drop in the migration flow across the Mediterranean to Europe. Why? European countries decided to crack down. They quit letting them in. But remember, America's bad. We're the we're the bad guys. But that's not all, because then we turn and we look at the African migrants passing through San Antonio. We're swiftly sending them out throughout the rest of the country. Why? Migrants surrendered to Border Patrol agents and claimed asylum after crossing the Rio Grande. The agency did not, as it's supposed to, turn families over to Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Instead, it released families onto the streets of Eagle Pass and Del Rio. The African migrants then bought bus tickets to San Antonio or Austin and then continued to fan out from there. Why are we allowing this to happen? And it's not about hating anybody. It's about saying that's not the best thing for the United States. How you doing? My name's Greg Knapp. I'm in for the doctor on the Savage Nation. You can jump in at 855-400-SAVAGE. Go to michaelsavage.com for headlines, the Savage Podcast, and the new book, A Savage Life. It comes out next week, but you can pre-order now. I've been talking about this illegal alien problem, and the Washington Examiner has a piece today. Here's the headline. Border Patrol agents not immune to the onslaught of illnesses plaguing the migrant holding centers. Now, you're not supposed to talk about this. Oh, you're one of those people that think that these illegal aliens are all just a bunch of people with diseases. Well, you're just awful. How dare you? What do you just hate these people? But here's the problem with that is there are some people coming in who have diseases. And we need to take care of that. First of all, if we're going to let them in, we need to do a thorough screening. If they have these medical issues, let's help them. And let's make sure they're not spread. But ignoring it is not the answer. But see, the far left has to ignore it because they know if you really look at it, then people are going to start saying, whoa, wait a second, we can't just let all these people in. And we certainly have to make sure that they're not sick. So we just can't talk about it. You bring it up and you're just called names. See, eventually, shut up is not an argument. Hey, what do you think about shut up? But then there's this problem. You're racist. But what about this? You're a xenophobe. But then you're a homophobe. You're a transgenderphobe. Whatever thing. Just yell an accusation at somebody. Tell them to shut up and not talk about the actual problem. That only works for so long. I think it's one of the reasons Trump got elected. Because people like you and me were tired of pointing something out and being called names. Hey, you know, we've actually got a problem with homelessness. Racist! Well, I don't even know what color the homeless are. I'm just talking about there's a homeless problem. Oh, shut up! After a while, shut up doesn't work as an argument. So we're told we can't talk about this. It's not racism to talk about the problem with the illegal aliens coming through who are sick. It's common sense. The common sense is if you've got a large population coming in from third world countries, and these are people coming from the worst parts of the third world countries because they're coming illegally because they can't get in legally, and they're trying to flee bad situations. Isn't it common sense to think they may be bringing some problems with them? That doesn't mean it's racism, it's fact. Border Patrol's holding facilities in the Del Rio and El Paso sectors are inundated with sick detainees and now sick Border Patrol agents. This is coming from union representatives of the Border Patrol. John Anfinson is a National Border Patrol Council vice president. He's in Del Rio. He says the number of people in custody and the subsequent illnesses among that population is unprecedented. Scabies, chickenpox, mumps, measles, and of course things like the flu, colds, body lice. Some of these things, he says, spread like wildfires when you get into a cramped holding cell. He said, we have a lot of agents who are sick. The other day I talked to agents from 4 different stations. Every single one of them had a cough. He said, I'll go and I'll help process. And there was one day I spent processing. We had like 40 Guatemalans and Hondurans, and most of them had some kind of cough. Sure enough, the next day I'm sick for a week. It's become the new normal. And you got to just keep going and do your job because you can't just not process them. Then you got National Border Patrol Council Vice President, Agent in El Paso, Wesley Ferris. He said, it'll go in waves. Scabies, strep throat. That was the last one. Strep throat happened at the Santa Teresa station in New Mexico. It was everywhere. We've got active TB. That comes in fairly regularly. We had an incident of H1N1 swine flu in Clint, Texas with a juvenile. And then the ones that are most disruptive are the simple ones, regular flu or lice. This is happening all the time. And if you talk about it, you're called names. He said, we're getting higher than previous years' incidents of mild and possibly more serious types of illnesses that are not native to the United States. And then, of course, what happens is we're releasing these people, and they're going all across America, and it's spreading. Now, we do some cursory medical inspections, and people that have active problems, we take to the hospital, we treat them. We can't quarantine. We don't have enough space. But Border Patrol doesn't do blood work. And they say if we did, some of these things wouldn't show up in the blood at first, and we'd miss them, and they'd get in anyway. The El Paso official said the contracted medical professionals and Coast Guard officials are doing their best, but it's not enough. And there's a big risk posed to the general public in the United States because we're releasing hundreds of thousands of people this year. We don't have any idea how many of them are actually sick. Ferris said this, if I was running the ship, I'd make medically screening people a higher priority. At least 90% of the people coming into this sector are coming in at one spot. I'd get ahead of this game. I'd set up what you call a hot zone. I'd have medical right there. Listen, we're civil servants. It's what we're supposed to do. Make sure we at least know a person's background. We do it on the criminal side. But we're very reluctant to quarantine them medically. Then last week, the CDC announced activation of an emergency operations center in an effort to help with the Congo's Ebola outbreak. Now, remember, we just had the story that we've got 500 migrants coming in from Africa, some of them from the Congo. Oh, are you saying that these people have Ebola? No, I'm saying they might. If you're coming from a country that has an outbreak and you're coming in illegally and we're not screening you, aren't we just rolling the dice? Said you're going to have to sift through thousands before you get one major disease, says Ferris. He said, that's my nightmare. That somebody does get sick because then I'm going to have to make some funeral arrangements. He said it's not going to be an agent. It's going to be his 3-year-old kid at home who contracts Ebola or H1N1 because they're little. Yeah. And we're not allowed to talk about it because if you talk about it, somehow that makes you a racist. Something that's really happening, that the Border Patrol agents are telling you that's happening, that's dangerous to America, that's actually dangerous to the illegal aliens coming through, and we can't talk about it. No. Not in polite company, at least. 855-400-SAVAGE gets you on board the program. 855-400-SAVAGE. Online, of course, michaelsavage.com. The doctor will be back tomorrow. This story broke last week, and there's still some things bubbling up. And it was Friday that Andrew McCabe, or maybe it was late Thursday, that Andrew McCabe came out with CNN's Chris Cuomo. And I just had to play this for you because I'm watching it at home, and I couldn't believe it. Because you had President Trump come out and talk to Stephanopoulos. You remember this. And Stephanopoulos says, hey, your campaign this time around, if foreigners, if Russia, if China, if someone else offers you information on opponents, should they accept it or should they call the FBI? Now, to me, my answer would have been, George, that's a ridiculous question. Listen, I don't need anybody's help to win this election except the help of patriotic Americans who are going to vote for me. So I certainly wouldn't pay foreigners to spy and have those foreign spies pay Russians to dig up dirt and rumors and lies about my opponent and spread it to the media and the FBI like Hillary Clinton and the Democratic National Committee did. Next question. That's what I would have said. But Trump says, when he's asked, your campaign this time around, if foreigners, if Russia, if China, if someone else offers you information on opponents, should they accept it or should they call the FBI? Trump said, I think maybe you do both. I think you might want to listen. I don't think there's anything wrong with listening. If somebody called from a country, Norway, we have information on our opponent, I think I'd want to hear it. So Stephanopoulos, you want that kind of interference in our elections? Trump, It's not an interference. They have information. I think I'd take it. If I thought there was something wrong, I'd go maybe to the FBI. If I thought there was something wrong. So, I mean, if you really read what he said, he didn't say he would never go to the FBI. He didn't say that he would encourage foreign intelligence agencies to illegally spy in the United States of America and then take that illegal information and that's not what he said. But that's how it quickly was turned in the press. And my point is, President Trump was asked a hypothetical and he hasn't done it. And what he said he would do isn't even what they're saying he would do, compared to Hillary Clinton and the Democratic National Committee that actually did it. Not only did it, they paid for it. So I want to get you what Andrew McCabe said to CNN's Chris Cuomo, because he totally mischaracterizes everything in that story I just brought you. So I want to start with cut 2, where Chris Cuomo is asking Andrew McCabe, former FBI deputy director, he said, does the argument that, yes, okay, you shouldn't have Russians giving you anything, and you shouldn't have been paying Russians for information to amass a dossier the way Clinton did, do you see those as analogs? And so here's the answer, cut 2 from McCabe.
There's no equivalence between those two examples. To openly invite foreign intelligence officers, representatives from a hostile foreign government to steal information, to acquire opposition research in any way, in any illegal way that they might do that, and to present it to you is one thing.
Okay, stop right there. That was McCabe totally misconstruing what Trump was asked and what he answered. I read it to you, right? Stephanopoulos, your campaign this time around, if foreigners, if Russia, if China, if someone else offers you information on opponents, should they accept it or should they call the FBI? And Trump, I think maybe you do both. I think maybe you want to listen, right? So was anywhere in that question what McCabe just said? Where McCabe said to openly invite foreign intelligence offers from a hostile government to steal information. Did Trump say he was going to do that? No, absolutely not. To acquire opposition research in any way, in any illegal way. Did Trump at any time say, yeah, I would encourage them to do that illegally? I would encourage foreign intelligence agencies to spy in America and do things illegally? No, never once in there did Trump say anything like that. And yet that's how Andrew McCabe is setting it up. And he has to, because the only way he can say what Hillary Clinton and DNC did was different was to totally mischaracterize it. Because the only part of what Andrew McCabe is saying that I agree with is when McCabe said there's no equivalent between those two. And he's right. Because Trump is talking about if somebody just came up and said, hey, President Trump, we've got some information that we found on this person. Do you want to hear it? You're right. That's totally different than what Hillary Clinton and the DNC did, because Hillary Clinton and the DNC actually paid money to a foreign agent to go and pay more money to Russians to try to dig up dirt on their opponent. Not only did they say, we'll take it if somebody came to them, they paid for it. So McCabe tries to go on, and this time he mischaracterizes what Hillary Clinton and the DNC did. Cut 3.
For a campaign to hire a law firm, an American law firm, who then turns around and hires an American research company, who then contracts out with a foreign individual, that is not illegal. Campaigns are allowed to hire individuals, foreign individuals, and to pay those individuals for the services that they provide.
Wow. Okay. So he totally mischaracterizes what Hillary did. You see that? He tried to make it sound like, oh, they just hired an American law firm. And okay, what Hillary Clinton and the Democratic National Committee did was they tried to remove themselves by a couple degrees from what they knew was shady. They didn't go straight and pay money to Russians to dig up dirt on Trump because they knew that would look shady. They didn't even go straight to the foreign agent Steele from Great Britain to do it because they knew that would look shady. They didn't even go to the third party that was contracted out by the law firm they hired. They hired the law firm and said, you guys deal with it, don't tell us what you're doing. That's not an excuse from breaking the law. Because here's exactly what they did. Hillary Clinton and the Democratic National Committee spent millions of dollars to try to dig up dirt on Trump through foreigners. Byron York, I think, had a great tweet on this the other day. He said, The New York Times tried to say the dossier is not relevant to the Trump foreign oppo comments because British former spy Steele was not working for a hostile foreign government. So hostility, not foreignness, is the key. Also because Steele turned over his findings to the FBI. Well, if you remember, first of all, Trump talked about if Norway did it, that's not a hostile government. But anyway, I love what York said. Number one, Steele was not the dossier source. In his own words, Steele says his sources were A, a senior Russian foreign ministry figure. B, a former top-level Russian intelligence officer still active inside the Kremlin. C, a senior Russian financial official. And G, a senior Kremlin official. D, that would be. And then secondly, Steele's goal was to make these false findings public. Remember, he gave them first to Fusion GPS, who briefed the Clinton lawyer, who briefed the Clinton campaign, then the FBI, and then the press. And by the way, they did that before the election. It was leaking out before the election. The FBI strategy was brilliant because Steele could inflate the dossier's credibility by telling the press the FBI was investigating. And you heard how McCabe tried to totally twist what that entire thing was. Oh, I got a little bit more from him you need to hear. Love your thoughts on it, too. 855-400-SAVAGE. My name's Greg Knapp, in for the doctor on the Savage Nation.
Talk about Delta Rescue and Leo Grillo for a while now, right? Why don't you take the next step? Help out our little furry friends. Go to deltarescue.org/savage and make that donation you've been thinking about. Remember, your contribution is tax deductible, and it makes a big difference. What is Delta Rescue? It was founded by Leo Grillo in 1979. It is the largest no-kill care-for-life sanctuary of its kind in the world, and he cares for up to 1,500 abandoned dogs, cats, and horses. But besides this 115-acre super sanctuary, Delta's plans include training others to rescue abandoned animals all over the country. You can read more about this strategy in Leo's legacy letter on their website. Why don't you get more information about it on Delta's tax-saving estate planning vehicles, which can also help you build the size of your estate while helping animals? Just go to deltarescue.org/savage. So look, if you love animals and hate taxes, and who doesn't, visit deltarescue.org/savage today and donate. It's simple. deltarescue.org/savage. Thanks for listening.
My name is Greg Knapp, in for Savage on the Savage Nation. He'll be back tomorrow, 855-400-SAVAGE. We're talking about what the former FBI Director Andrew McCabe said on CNN the other day with Chris Cuomo, because it's just amazing how he mischaracterized what Trump said about accepting opposition research, mischaracterized what Hillary Clinton and the DNC actually did in hiring a foreign agent who then hired Russian foreign agents, and then mischaracterized what Steele did when he got the information. Listen to cut 4 from Andrew McCabe.
That in the example of the Clinton campaign, it was that very foreign individual who stepped forward and provided the information he had collected to the FBI simply because he was so troubled by what he was seeing.
He didn't step forward because he was troubled by what he was seeing. He stepped forward because he wanted to get it out to the media and the FBI so it would hurt Trump and it would lead to more investigation into him. I mean, Steele even admitted that he wasn't sure about some of this information, that it wasn't verified. Turned out it was all a bunch of lies. And by getting it to the FBI and then letting the media know that the FBI had the information, it elevated the entire story so that it could be handled by the mainstream media and gotten out. I mean, it's just total lie after lie after lie from McCabe. Remember, this is a guy who was fired for violating the Department of Justice policies by authorizing a leak to the media on the Clinton Foundation probe and then lying to the DOJ about it. And now this guy's back all of a sudden? Unbelievable. Unbelievable. My name's Greg Knapp. I'm in for Dr. Savage. This is the Savage Nation.